We are almost at the end of our series dedicated to Pasolini. We are Monday. So tonight's screen is Last Words, Pasolini's Last Words by Cathy Crane. She's an award-winning documentarist, and she's here tonight. Her Pasolini's Last Words offer a poetic and visually striking reconstruction of the final year in the life of Pier Paolo Pasolini, one of Italy's most provocative and visionary intellectuals. If you have seen the other nights, you already know Pasolini very well by now. Tomorrow we will have the last evening with the American premiere of Il Vangelo secondo Matteo in colors. But before we dive into tonight's documentary, we will have a video of a poetry read by author Stacy Szymaszek. I don't know if this is the right pronunciation. I tried my best. And then we will have Cathy here on stage. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Szymaszek, poet. Wrote this book called the Pasolini book that was published a few years ago by Goliath. I'm very happy. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. Happy to join you. Thank you to Cathy, NYU, and everybody involved in this event celebrating Pasolini's 100-year anniversary of his death. I'm going to read from the part of this book that I wrote during the pandemic when I was living in the desert in Tucson, Arizona. And each poem is named after one of Pasolini's poems and is a response to his work. Diary. I solved the problem of the young queer woman on the plane by telling her I used to have a very social job. What no one knew, including myself, was that when it was over, I'd go back to being an underachiever in a westward town, but this time without anxiety. A famous artist of the Lower East Side erased his early years as a poet, yet I had thought of him every day in a way I only thought about poets. As I passed his old address, a movie theater for years now, splendid day after splendid day. The privilege of thinking. When I spent most of my time surviving a city, time passed slowly, and I felt a little immortal. You can't imagine an end to vigilance or moving from one miasma to the next. There was a time night air was thought to cause plague. As a fresh New Yorker, I did catch strep, and my mucus was flecked with dirt. I rode the subway and wrote what I saw, including my own modest, wrong-headed theories. In the desert, I just sit and think, and in thinking, and using the sky to know time, I am mortal. Tears. Through brutal force, common sense becomes underground knowledge. Credentialed cynics teach the outcome is death with no light to keep their jobs. One person's resistance shines light on live tragedy. We are all in danger. The corporation in the desert casts you into another desert where water is an image of water. The periphery of the city bleached, a circle of crossbones. The libraries are closed, pot shots at our death, our survival. The poets will walk out of the circle with acrid farewells, and I in the lecture hall seats of today have a pissy snake in my guts, and 1,000 of my tears evaporate, and my blood is too thick to draw, and my sweat is metallic pins from the roots of my hair to the bottom of my feet, a great gushing out, a great weeping of salt. One can claim to not understand because it is common knowledge, which is forbidden. pierced by another 100 years, another martyrdom that would prove useless. If I made a grab for that epic light, my immediate fate releases me from any attempt to explain myself. I am an adolescent, and this is an unknown Rome. Fragment to death, to Pasolini. I was born to an eventful summer. A man with money got away with manslaughter of a woman, and not many years later, money murdered you and got away in one of its many sports cars. I've tried to understand you circling me, sometimes an aura, other times an astral speck. Sometimes my peers leave with you and family doesn't want to talk. The person is gone with their story, and we coagulate in the wake of their light, independently, and I come no closer. I return to your poetry, an isolated, bad-mouthed woman, free of most norms, including denial of you. You are not close to me now, but within. I make you a deal with the crone crown in an angry state, a livid poetry. Crown my liver. Every real act of the world is a great poem. Am I healthy? My body does as it wishes. Believe in its sovereignty soundtrack. Teenagers in black who laugh at adults who collude with rich murderers. I work all day, like a hip priest, and at night I wander the house on the slats that don't creak, reading the tea leaves at the back of my skull. Frequency of rose bouquets, hung stalk first to dry, mark every sill as if to say, someone with a heart still lives here. The sound of street racing mobs come down on my calm courage. They want us to be like scientists. This is the rationale, outcome of their experiment. But when I watch myself with camera eye being massacred, my ancestral blood flies a flock of crows upon the etched faces of the treacherous. It is not my job to study their political violence, of which we are always before, but to write all day with painstaking attention to each line, and how I love the people I love and how I hate the revving newborn fascist, how I celebrate by releasing unforgiving word bundles that rise into the civic sky. The search for a home. I'm searching for the house where I'll be buried. The real estate in towns outside cities up 100%. The only thing gathering is paperwork. In this game of musical chairs, I was one of the standing. Poet with a round face baked by the sun and salt hair. No one in charge is taking their organization in my direction. God, it's an upsetting day when life is forbidden, when mountains are on fire again and polling places allow guns. The city feels like an enemy city. So I look for a house that I no longer want to beat the rugs of my anguish. Let this be my last youthful reaction, a menopause of reaction. Troubling, with an artichoke for dinner to eat the middle velvet. Let's see what is here today that wasn't here yesterday. My sorrow outweighs my acceptance. And today, more than yesterday, my fear exalts me. In strange October heat, I float to the market, masked for meat, where it once bustled with some sense of civic joy. Another palimpsest of a city, of the past, thrown on top. When the working class supported their people with one job, making steel or delivering milk like my granddad's. Every place I've lived, I've watched mirrored towers appear. I'd really like to see the planners of these dumps for the de-animated who see themselves reflected back. No eyes, no ears, no mouths, homes for people with no nerves. Balconies designed for non-use, the technical and ethical dysfunction always equivalent. The autocrat has one eye in his pocket and it winks and thinks it can bless people. So where then to find my studio, which plants itself with an energy all its own? Where then to find my home? Dreamt of nest of my poems, which I read, which I need, like I need Pasolini, Gramsci's Ashes, and Poem in the Shape of a Rose. One who people like to say predicted his murder, as if a seer and not a queer, whose nonconformity was bothersome to practically everybody. Thus he made a home with his mother and cousin outside of Rome. I fill out the forms of the world and leave too many blanks. People are bored by those who endure. Maybe when you need to know how it's done, you won't be able to find anyone in a fixed residence. Ancient world to future world, conversing in an elided fashion. I could play up the part of angry woman just to live in this region where the concept of summer has collapsed in the pyre, with other frictions that confirm our being. So the house I'm looking for will be, why not, a basement? Or a shed where I can continue to draw with charcoal and dirty my apron with dust. I already have a twitch, a technical intuition to layer myself in the danger calls of birds. Maybe I'll muster some gratitude for the deformed hearts of conformists, deformed not by their capital, but through loving exclusion. The earth is the center of their universe. We are forced from one position into the next, then another, and through grace, one creates a new style to feel so different and lost. The day of my death. In a city, if there be a city. In a town, if there be a town. By the sea, if the sea has not engulfed the city. Or in the desert, on the outskirts of fire. I'll drop dead under the sun, my face a blonde whorl, and I'll close my eyes, signaling to Gothic birds, I am their splendor. Under a warm coat of snow, under a cold green pile of felled saguaro, under the spell of clawing lobsters, I'll fall into my death's mouth, heaving inward my language, leaving untraceable guidelines for beautiful gender queers who will run in the refracted light I have just lost, flying from schools, if there be schools, still caring that their curls be disarranged upon their brows. Thank you.
13 years ago, released 13 years ago. But I wanted to just say a few words about Stacy's poetry and her incredible book, which we just discovered you can access through purchasing it at a local bookstore in Brooklyn called Paper Cavalier. What's not to love about that? So PAPERCAVALIER. This book it sort of brings up the question of what are we women doing engaging directly with the inspiration of Pasolini, who was decidedly a man's man. And so that question has come up a lot in the last decade in which I've talked about the film that you're about to see, which I almost think is irrelevant. Fact is that the past, as Faulkner said, is never dead. And we find our inspiration from the sources that move us for whatever reason, really. Anyway, I've been as inspired by Stacy's poetry about Pasolini as I have been by Pasolini.
have a quick Q&A, because then Cathy will, let me help you, will take us upstairs for a personalized tour of the exhibition, because Cathy is also the co-curator of the exhibition, the video installation we have upstairs.
Yeah, I mean, you can, if you've already seen it before you came in, it's the lobby. There's a few new works that I put together in collaboration with John DiStefano, another artist obsessed with Pasolini. So you can feel free to go up there if you leave the Q&A or after the Q&A, and I'm happy to say a few words, even upstairs. Yeah.
So you said obsessed. I'm very curious. So how and when did you first encounter the work of Pier Paolo Pasolini, an author that I consider extremely Italian and maybe not so much well known here in the US?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I know that I don't know Italian. So I encountered him in translation, but I encountered him in a documentary of which he was a part. I don't think it was about him exactly, in like 2000, 2002. And he was being interviewed and saying it was 1975, and he was working on a novel called Petrolio. And I was curious about what his preoccupation might have been about oil in the mid-70s. So I bought the book. And the middle 40 pages are all about blowjobs outside of Rome. So he had a way of not holding back. Let's put it that way. He was a polemicist, and I appreciated him first through his writing. Absolutely. That's how I came to him. His words.
And so this documentary is your second experimental biography, correct? But why did you choose this particular approach, this poetic approach, to describe the last year in Pasolini's life?
I don't really generally like linearity, so a biography that's chronological is to me not interesting, because it's not really how life is lived in my own experience. So I had to find a way in, and I thought the last year of his life was a good way in, because there was a lot of things that he was publishing, he was working on, he was reconsidering his very first film, Accatone, because he was publishing on the front page of the evening paper in Rome his various screeds critiquing the Christian Democrats as a continuation of the fascist regime of World War II. So he was making some pretty public enemies in that year. So I just chose it.
He went through 33 trials in his life.
Yeah.
And he was attacked many times in the street. Were you inspired, or did you watch some of the previous biography of Pasolini, about Pasolini?
Yeah. I mean, I stole some of the images from them. That's about all I did in the way of nodding to it. Yeah, in general, I'm more interested. The other experimental biography was also about a writer, Simone Weil. So for me, I'm interested in the practice of reading, and I probably wouldn't make films if I didn't read. It's part of the figuration of images that emerge from that encounter with one person's language and my reception of that language.
So it's interesting that you chose two writers for these experimental biographies, because you also chose a poetic language, and you used the vehicle of cinema. But Pasolini, as we saw in the documentary, thought that cinema was the expression of reality as reality itself. I mean, there's no translation. It's like reality. Do you think that's true? And also because his movies were not, I think, a faithful translation of reality. They were almost a metaphor.
It's not that I don't believe many of the things he said, but I do believe he's a polemicist. So I think he's actually trying to push the question. I mean, first of all, one would want to ask, what is reality? If maybe film is made from that, but we're not entirely convinced.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be the first to understand, obviously, that things are framed, and when they're framed and represented, they are no longer the thing itself. They're reconstituted.
Whereas literature evokes reality. And
Yeah, so the extent to which I do that structurally in the film is actually interested in chapters, and those chapters are not just only about introducing what's to come, but also allow for a sort of retroactive meditation on what just happened. They're small; they're like 3-word intervals, that's the kind of thing that I think while reading him, I'm also doing. I'm moving forward and I'm moving back, and so. His life just should not be treated linearly, is my feeling. But
Pasolini was communist, Catholic. He was, there were these two. Queer. And he was...
All three. Well, socialist. I don't know if I'm
You're
a
also
communist.
Catholic. Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I mean, not still, but I was raised one. Yeah.
Okay, so you can understand more than anybody
Absolutely.
else his point of view. Very particular.
Preoccupations.
I thought it was a very Italian particular mix, but now you tell me is not so.
It's global.
Because I was wondering.
It's a global conspiracy.
I was wondering, in fact, that if there is any universal message that we can learn from Pasolini. I mean, maybe the audience here will tell us if somebody like Pasolini can resonate to people here on this side of the pond and in a different period.
Well, I mean, first of all, he's describing a moment that is not unlike some of what's happening in our world right now. And so to me, he was so, in a way, he was prescient. He understood. Like the strategy of tension thing, he already knew about that, even though it wasn't revealed or described at all until well after his death. But he had a sense of that, and some of that was actually emerging in the novel, Petrolio.
Yeah, and I have a last question before opening to our public. The title itself, Pasolini's Last Words, suggests both an ending and a legacy. If you had to choose one last word from Pasolini that still feels urgent today, which would it be?
One word?
One word. Oh, if you have more.
Durations.
Which is also
Yeah, it's the name of
the name of the exhibition. Why Durations?
Is about how we live in time, how one lives in time, how one endures time, how one might, in fact, leave a legacy after the embodied moment. Something about it being lived, time being lived.
Do we have any questions from the public? I see one hand there.
I was wondering if you saw Abel Ferrara's Pasolini at the theater.
I did. I love Willem Dafoe, so it was okay. I mean, it's a melodrama about the last night of his life, the last week of his life, and so people talk, and there was nothing surprising about it. But I mean, it is a preoccupation for people who are interested in understanding Pasolini's life is to understand the ending of that life, which was very dramatic and melodramatic in and of itself. In fact, I still think it's an open case in Italy.
It is, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so, it's an opera now. I don't know. Yeah, that's just not how I would approach it. But I use archival material, and I'm very interested in how that interacts with fictional staging and actors, actually in the repetitions of gestures. And I was more interested in not sort of playing something off as a naturalized approach, but something very different. But yeah, of course, I knew all the things they were staging, because I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Any other question?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, first, shout out to Stacy for the poetry recitation. I just was wondering, was it live?
No, that was recorded.
Okay, because anyways, the errors in the narration, I would just want to comment on that. I was thinking about how it kind of was like a subconscious taking the
In
thank
terms
you.
of Stacy's work or in the film?
In terms of both, actually,
Okay.
of course. Yeah, both. It's just like I got my attention when she was kind of rereading the words as a result of errors in reading. It was very interesting to kind of think about how maybe you kind of built your own image of the poetry as you end up reading it. And that was beautiful, nonetheless.
It was beautiful. I agree.
And when it comes to the film, I really, really thank you so much. Honestly, it was really powerful. Kind of like getting overwhelmed with everything that you showed beautifully. And I'm interested in the structure of the movie. I remember writing an article. And it was sort of like it had a similar structure, kind of like was trying to mingle poetry and my prose and modernist poetry, which I write in usually, and into kind of like an essay structure. And I see that beautifully like embodied in the film language. It was almost like reading poetry, and like it was like the camera was. You were painting the image with poems rather than with light, and I thought that was really beautiful. It's just if you could comment on how you came up or like your choice of the structure.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, first of all, my camera work is very different from Pasolini's. It's very frontal and static, and I am moving through space in a handheld with a Bolex camera. I mean, first of all, structure comes from like the things that intrigued me in what I was reading about him. So my first order of business was to return to the places in question. And then I started to play with layering the present in those places and the record of those places. But the structure of it, I mean, I talked to an editor once who said, you brought the interview with him in right at the perfect time, because there's a way in which it sort of bogs down and you're like, are we going to be on some crazy roller coaster, slow, drawn out drip of poetry or what? And he always saved the film. So it was also a question of when he himself would appear and in what way. I didn't want it to be only his voice also, so I had a lot of his written material read by a single actress, which, some people have freaked out about that. Why are you doing that? It's like, because it's my film. I get to do what I want to do.
Period.
But also it was just like sort of to centralize the female voice as a way of, it's like when an orchestra plays, it doesn't matter who's, I don't know, there's something about the fact that it's an instrument, the voice too, so my presence is in there somehow also, not just the handheld work, but the voice. I think. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's all very insightful. And
Okay.
I want to leave more room for everyone, but just like one other thing
Yep.
I wanted to ask is the inclusion of Pasolini and the forms of the city. That is really a very prophetic documentary, and I'm interested to know like how you kind of correlate it with the echoes of Pasolini in the modern age. I mean, especially like, his visit to New York, his comments on poverty and the consumerism uprising and the Beat generation as kind of like, a haven for this bohemian revival, and kind of like it's all of this commentary is very prophetic. He was like the last prophet. I would say, and yeah, it's like how would you see the echo of Pasolini?
Well, I think that's why I was drawn to him, because he was speaking to me. I felt like it was a necessary critique about consumer cap. When he goes, he's losing his mind by the beach. When he's like, well, it happened so quickly, we didn't even know it happened, and yet here we are, completely, fully indoctrinated. And what's left of the diverse ways of being human. I mean, I've not been able to get that declaration out of my head. and it's still alive. I mean, as long as consumer capitalism is alive, so will that loss be.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And just one last thing, responding to your universal message. Sorry, guys.
He wants to share the mic. I know.
Yeah. So when you were talking about a universal message that kind of like echoes in the audience, I can't stop thinking about Rambo and his Letters of the Seer, which represents a manifesto or a statement of absolute intellectual modernity in the weaving of words in any medium, really. And it's a freedom that rebels against the expressive and oppressive restrictions and shackles in the art of expression, which I find is embodied perfectly in Pierre's narratives and narrative nature that soured with a freedom beyond which there is no freedom. Thank you.
Any other question? No? If there are no other questions, then Cathy, we can go upstairs. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Cathy.